Doing well. Good evening, everyone.
Evening. Good evening, Sandra, once again.
Good
Okay,
evening.
so yeah, you're welcome once again to the Power Platform series. Today is day 12. Interesting. We're gradually approaching the end of the series. We scheduled the training to run over, I think, 20 days, and this is day 12 already. So, which means we're about two third of the session or the what's it called, the schedule already. So let me know what have we learned so far. I just want one key thing from everybody. Tell me one key thing you have learned so far. So we know maybe we have learned, maybe we haven't, and you're gonna accompany that key thing you have learned with what you think we would have done better. So that's what I want from us. So quickly, who is starting? Tell me one key thing you have learned.
Okay.
Okay, please. Thank you, man.
Okay, I think under the data modeling, I
Okay.
still made the mistake. Yeah. Um, I was, I was, I felt good when we're talking about 4 steps, or no, 5 steps we needed to take, when we are trying to work on Power BI.
Yeah.
So what had happened was that I wanted to experiment, and so I had this file, and the next thing, I just went to Power BI. It was when I was trying to do visualization. Okay, so when I transformed the data, I couldn't find any connected table. It was then I remembered that, oh, okay,
You
I'm
did
starting
model.
from the end. I had not done my modeling. It was
Yeah.
so funny, even though I've not had time to go through it, but it was then it made sense that it's true. I needed to sit down, understand my data, and then do the proper, follow the steps,
Mm.
before I can go ahead with the modeling and visualization. So for me,
Yeah.
that's one key thing. I still have not
Okay.
had time to go through that particular file. I'm working on an employee file
Okay.
with so that's what I'm trying to do. But I don't think there's no quick fix around it. So I need
Mhm.
to go through those steps, which will help me see what the outcome would be, what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's okay. That's the key thing you have learned. What could we have done further or better?
So I needed to have gone through those steps. So I
Okay.
started already. I didn't go through the steps. I just uploaded, got the data, did my transformation, and then I was now expecting that, okay, when I go to the modeling part, I will see the connection. So of course there was no
Yeah.
connection because it was only one table I had there. I had not created
Mhm.
the different tables that will bring about the connection. So that's
Mhm.
one key thing. It's not like Excel. With Excel, you just have the file and you can
Yeah.
just do a chart
Plug in
from
your
it. You
pivot
don't have to
tables.
you don't have to think through anything.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. And so I'll come back to something on that. Let me
Okay.
just quickly have others speak. Tope.
Hi, Hussein. Good evening, everyone.
Name.
Yeah, for me, it's been an interesting ride. I've learned a lot. Talk of DAX that you introduced to us last session. I think Noye did, and the rules of we need to take a look at before we even start preparing our visuals and then doing our analysis rather. So it's been an interesting ride for me and some other things as well that you've actually taught us. So thank you very much.
Okay, so Tope, what could we have done better Yeah, just two things. Well, I know it's we wouldn't have been perfect. So some shortfalls, shortcomings. We just want to know if there are review points we could have as well.
Yeah, for me, I've not documented any. Just as I've said, it's been an interesting one for me. So I've not documented any lapses actually.
Mm,
But yeah, I've not documented any, so I can't speak to any at the moment.
okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, Oluwafemi. Yeah, let's have you.
Okay, I didn't know that what you wanted me to share is what you guys could have done better.
Mm, yeah, that's the second arm of it.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Do I share now or I should wait?
Yes, please. You can.
Okay, so you would think I have something I want to say that you people could have done better. You guys are the trainers, so and you've impacted so much learning to us, and so I'm thinking, okay, so what is it they could have done better? It's difficult to tell what you could have done better when we're the recipient.
Mm,
Okay, so maybe I know as you train, we go along, maybe to push us to start something, where
mm.
maybe we'll share our screen and then um okay, but you do that in a way you ask us, okay, so what's next? What should we do here? I think there's nothing really to do better. It's been a lot of impactful learning as far as
Mm,
I'm concerned. Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And
Thanks a lot.
I
Okay,
must,
Tope. Aye.
and if I may add to that as well, I think there was a session that was it you or Noye that was taking us through, and Oluwafemi had a challenge. I think she wanted to ask a question, and maybe it was Noye that said she should share her screen, and she told that she joined with her phone. So I think in a way, you guys have also done it as well. So sharing a screen might not really, it might not be really feasible because at the moment I'm also joining with my phone while I do all the activity on my laptop.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, okay, yes, that's noted. Thank you for that feedback, Tope. Okay, so let me have Baraka. Are you there? Hello, Baraka. Okay, maybe she's not here. Sandra, can we have you quickly, please?
Okay, for me, I think so far, it has been a it has been great weeks of learning. Um, uh, for me, I think my takeaway is that generally you can do a lot with data if you have the right tools. And I wasn't in the class last week, but I watched the recording and just looking at how DAX can help you extend beyond the let's say the default Power BI, right? So extending Power BI to meet some of your needs because obviously the platform may not have everything that you want, but being able to use DAX or write DAX can help you, get more granular. So I think that's it for me. Area of improvement, I don't think I have any. I just think generally I wish that it was like a longer course so that we could go into more details. So that's all from me.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Sandra, for the feedback as well. Okay, so quickly, Ablaziz, can we have you?
Hello. Good evening. Can you
Hi.
can you hear me,
Um,
please?
yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for these opportunities and for impacting lives on us all. It's been a good time, and for me, I've learned like creating an app, and I've also done some apps by myself, and with the skills that I've learned so far from your teachings. So, what I can say is, what I can recommend, we should try to work on maybe life projects so that that one will boost our chances and maybe to add to our portfolio, maybe make it like looking for job and searching for jobs and even personally to have that kind of to boast of what we've been taught so far, you understand? So we should try to work on those things so that we can have that confidence. Also, um, we can still, like one of the students has said, if we can still have more time, because I think we can still do many things on this thing. Maybe after this time, can still do maybe in at your own leisure time or when you see that you are good enough so that we can still work more on all these applications, all these applications. So that is what I just think that we can still work on. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Abdulaziz. Thank you for the feedback as well. Tope, I will come to you shortly. Let me just quickly get to Yinka. So Yinka, I hope you go what we're talking about.
Good evening.
Evening.
Actually, I joined late, but I think I was able to catch up with what you were discussing. So far the learning has been encouraging, has been insightful, and let me say I've gained a lot. I've gained a lot, ranging from Power Apps, Power BI, right from the start of the program, and I believe I'm still going to gain more going forward. So I think the where you can actually improve is like what Abdulaziz has said, maybe giving us an assignment, more of a real life assignment that we should go and tackle it and get give you a feedback to assess it and tell us where we are lacking and where we should improve ourselves. So that it will just not be learning without us saying at least to some extent I can do this because I am confident of doing this because someone who was my tutor has actually rated what I have done or some other things like that. Because if we keep learning, and we are not being assessed, we won't have that self-confidence of I can do it until when we are being assessed by someone or maybe a tutor, a mentor like that. That's when we can boastfully say, I think I've known this thing, I think I can do this thing, I can do it like this and like that. So just giving us assignments, giving us some tasks to do after the class, then you should improve in that.
Okay. Thank you, Yinka, for that. Thank you so much. Tope, quickly.
I thank you once again, Musin, and in line with the assessment that some of my colleagues have rightly said, I would like to ask: Is this? I mean, you taking us through Power Platform, talk of Power BI, Virtual Agent, App, and Power Automate. Is there any certification that we can go for after this series? Maybe an exam that we can write, and then you are confident that these guys that have taught within this space, they are going to do wonderfully well. Is there any exam that we can do after that?
Okay. Thank you very much. everybody for the feedback. Yeah, so personally, I like to get feedbacks because I believe that no matter how much planning you put into something, there would always be something you forgot or something you're not doing well. This series was planned for weeks, from the outline, from a lot of things around it. But I personally still believe that there will be things that we can actually do better, which is why I had sought from us to give us some feedbacks. So, and I appreciate the feedbacks really. So, I just quickly want to address some of what you have mentioned, and so that we can go into what we are to discuss today. First of it is one is we need to practice a lot more. So some of these learnings will begin to make more sense. We will begin to make more meanings when we start thinking around life situations. Okay, you want to analyze data, you want to prepare a report in Power BI. What is the life cycle? What do you need to start with? What are those things you need to check? What are those things you need to ensure you put in place so as to have a good analysis eventually? So if we're learning this concept this way and we are not thinking around life situations, we may not eventually get what we actually need. And that's the problem with our educational sector, really. Many of these things that we are learning today are things that were taught in our secondary school, in our days in the university. We did statistics, we did a lot of things. But because those concepts were not tied down to life situations, that's why they were various. We were unable to really put them into good use. So practice, as it has always been iterated, we need to practice. And on our own end, yes, we mentioned assignments. Personally, for some of us that we have been together or we're together beyond this series, we know that for whatever I do, for whatever class I take, I don't miss out giving assignments to people. But the challenge I have at the moment is look at the assignment we had on Power Query. I've not reviewed it till now, to be honest. I know those things I steered them on my email so for quick access, but I've still not reviewed them. It's because of the number of things I'm juggling with. I'm supposed to do some recordings. I've not had time to do those. So, but it's never an excuse. This is something that we have taken upon ourselves to do. So what I actually did plan was that after our Power BI session, we are supposed to run the Power BI tomorrow for now. So what we would do is we'll provide us with some data sets to work on, come up with a report, a full report. So you clean the data if it needs to be cleaned, you model, you build, you write some DAX, just come up with a standard report from that data set. That data set will get to us after our class tomorrow, God willing. And the plan we had for, if we remember when we had introductory class for the series, was that we would have projects to work on, and there will be a weekend free of classes. That should be maybe in 2 weeks' time. We'll have a weekend free of classes for us to work on those projects. So we provide us with scenarios, case studies for Power Apps, for BI, for Automate, virtual agent, probably, but essentially it should be around apps, automate, and BI. So we provide us with case studies to work on a solution individually or as group, depending on how the coordinators, depending on whatever they agree on. So that would come to us before that weekend that we would be free. So we would have that weekend to work on the project and then come back to send it to us, we review, we come back to give us, just an overview of what is expected, how we could improve on it, and then we go into the last phase of the training, which is supposed to be we now looking at practical scenarios. You have looked at how to build Power Apps. Let's now see how can we do some integrations. We want to integrate Power Apps with Power Automate. We want to integrate Power Automate with Power BI. We want to integrate Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. We consider some of the scenarios and see how powerful Power Platform could really be. So that's some of those things that we have in plan, which I think would address some of what we raised on the assignment and as well we raised on the project. So yes, another thing we considered, this to run 20 sessions already. And we actually did think around having it to go too lengthy. We can see at this time, we are getting fewer on the call already. Yeah, we are not after numbers. Yes, the goal is, if after the whole series we have someone, even if it's just a single person, that we can say that this person got value from the training, got a job around the Power Platform, we have achieved, of course. Some people did similar things for us. That's why we have come together to do this for the community as well. So it's not about numbers really, but I think one of what could have, drew people back a bit was the length of the session. So if we were thinking that we should have this Power Platform series up to the advanced level, of course, we might be running into like 50 sessions. That's that we are doing. If we want to take DAX in 10 sessions, 2 hours per session, it is very possible. Or we may still not exhaust it. So, but for now, we have we have in stock everything that we need to start out, practice to get to intermediate level, and then probably sometimes towards the end of the year or towards the middle of the year, we could have another series that will address some advanced topics when it comes to the Power Apps, the Power Platform generally. And like we did mention, what exam can we write after this series? If after this series you attended everything from session 1 to session 20, you followed up with all assignment and practice, we can confidently tell us that you can go and sit for PL 900. PL 900 is Power Platform, Microsoft Power Platform Fundamentals. Go and sit for that exam, and by God's grace, you would pass that exam. You shouldn't have less than 70% in that exam. So with everything that we have taught now, I took that exam. When was that? That should be last year, maybe October or so. I had 882 or something in that exam. So the exam, everything we have in that exam is what we have in this series and beyond, even more than that. The exam is not as detailed and as deep as what we have done in this series. And okay, Sandra, you have something quickly?
Yeah, sorry, can you come again with the name of the exam?
The exam is Microsoft 900.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. Microsoft?
That is the exam. Hello, did you get that, Sandra?
No, I didn't.
Microsoft Power Platform Fundamentals.
Okay, thank you.
PL 900. Yes, you're welcome. So we can sit for that exam. And after the training, we'll try as much as possible to see also how we can, yes, for those of us that will be committed to that, how we can get vouchers for that exam. It's possible. People get free vouchers for that exam. Actually, if you are registering yourself for that exam, you get a voucher, you register, I think it's $80 or so. So that's the registration fee for that exam. But there are ways that people get vouchers for that exam, which we can actually work with us on. But we need to be sure that we are ready and we are committed to doing that. I think I've addressed all the questions for now. So 2 things on our side, on our end, and we should expect there are projects that are coming our ways, and also the recordings. Hopefully, we'll see how we can manage our resources better to see how we can begin to push out some content. So I will just implore us to be on the lookouts for some content on the YouTube channel. Essentially, we begin with Power Apps so we don't begin to fragment things. So we begin with Power Apps, have those contents recorded, and then we can go into some other products. So let's quickly go in. In our last class, we went into introduction to DAX, and then in that class we looked at some bases when it comes to DAX. And I told us that DAX means what? What is DAX today? Quickly. Oluwafemi.
So I have a question.
Yes, please.
Okay, so like the visualization that we did last week, I can't find them.
Okay.
Where do I find those visuals?
The visuals that we imported.
Yes. because I can see my recent files. So, but I was thinking that when I open my recent files, I will see the visuals, see all the models, but I'm not seeing them. I'm only seeing them when I see the files, as if I've not worked on them at all.
Okay, let me confirm if I got that correctly. So you mean the what's it called, the reports you've worked on while the training has been on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, maybe it wasn't saved, or maybe, but if you actually did save them, you can just check them up on Power BI straight up. Have your Power BI opened, come to File, you'll see all your reports here. But if the reports are not here, there is every possibility that maybe they were not saved.
Okay.
Every possibility that they were not saved.
Sorry,
So that's
okay.
that.
Open
Mm.
report.
Yeah, open reports, you see some reports here, or if you click on browse, it takes you to the directory where you have some of your Power BI files saved.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I mentioned we talked about DAX. So what is DAX again, quickly?
That means
Data
data
analysis.
analysis expression.
Data analysis expressions. And in the last class, I mentioned to us that whenever we think of DAX, we are doing three things. What are the things we are doing in DAX? You are creating what, on what?
We're creating a table,
A table. What again?
a column, extra columns,
Column, extra columns, or what again?
and then calculations.
Calculations. Those are the three things you are doing in DAX. So whenever you write a DAX measure or a DAX formula, what you are doing is either you want that formula to evaluate into a new table that you want to have, or you want it to evaluate into a new column. Maybe you need an extra column on your table, or you want it to evaluate into a calculation that you will use on your visuals. So when you write DAX to evaluate into a table, what you have done is you have written a table. You have created a calculated, you have created a new table, or you have written a table measure. That is what you have done. And when you have your DAX evaluating into a new column, then you have done a calculated column. And when you write DAX to evaluate into a calculation, then that is when you have written a measure. So when you now write calculations, your measures, so what you are doing is either you are writing an anchor measure, or you are writing what we can call a time intelligence measure, or you call it filters, and what we call variances or comparison. So these are the things we need to bear in mind whenever we are writing DAX. So, but quickly, we need to understand something. How does DAX actually work? We have seen how to create tables, new tables. We saw that in the last class. We also did see how to create new columns, and we saw how to create an anchor measure. We saw a few of those in the last class. So today now, we want to take it a step further. Remember that if I want to add a new if I want to add a new measure, where do I go to? How do I create a new measure? Where do I go to? Anyone remembers?
The modeling tab.
Can go to under the calculation tab. You
Okay,
see, you see it there.
we can go to under the calculations tab. Where's calculations tab? Okay, calculations here, the group, you mean?
Okay, group rather.
Group, yeah. So now, a number of ways. I can stay on the home tab, do new measure under the calculations group. I can go to the modeling and the new measure from here. or I can come to the table where I want the measure to stay on. I want it to stay on my fact. I will right click and then I'll click on new measure. So if I click on new measure now and I do a sum, so let me say I want to know total revenue. So let me see if I can zoom this. So I want to do total revenue and I'm doing a sum of our sales, fact sales, sum of fact sales revenue. That is what I'm doing here. So if I put this on a card visual, if I place this on a card, total rev, drop it on a card. Okay, I have 77 billion here. And then if I place that same total rev on a table visual, and I have, sorry, what's happening? Drag this here. And I had my revenue from the D store to this. I want to see this by region rather. So I want to see this by region. Okay, let me increase the size of this quickly. Okay, so now I have this. We have,
bóyá ìjà
sorry,
kankan abẹ́rẹ́ kankan làwọn ọmọ yẹn máa jẹun ní ìdáhùn ẹ̀yà kan.
I think I need to, okay, yeah. So now let's look at these two. I dropped the same measure on these two visuals. I dropped the measure on a card visual. It returned this singular value, 77 billion, and I dropped the measure on a table visual, which returned these values and across all these regions. If I do a third one, and on this, I just come here to remove my regions. I have just my total revenue here. And then if I add a slicer, let's just hold on, follow through with this. And then on my slicer, let me add my year on my slicer. And then let me have this as a list. Okay, so I have all of this now. Let me just reduce the size of this. What is happening to my mouse board? Yeah, so we have all of this on the report. The same measure was dropped on a card, returned 77 billion. The same measure was dropped on this table. We have this breakdown, and on this table, we do not have this breakdown. What do we think is happening here? What do we think is happening? Sorry,
Filtering.
I didn't get that.
It was filtered on the table, but it
It
was
was
not filtered on the
filtered
card.
on the table, not filtered on the card. Excellent. So this is what is happening, and this will lead me to the concept of context in DAX. Whenever we write any measure within DAX, we need to understand that that DAX is being evaluated based on context. If we do not understand the context behind the evaluation of that DAX measure, we may have issues addressing whatever strange things we see as the result of our measures. When we have this on the card, what it just did was it returned the lump sum. What is the total revenue? It returned the singular figure. There is a context there. When we put it on this table, there is another context for the evaluation of this measure, total revenue. If I come to my slicer now and I select 2017, we don't have data for 2017. If I go 2015, you see everything on my visual has changed. On the card, I had 77 billion. Now it is 29 billion, which means that the context of evaluation of this card visual now has changed. What is the evaluation initially on the visual? That was an evaluation. But at the moment, the context has changed for the evaluation of our revenue, our total revenue, and that's why we are seeing a different result. So in DAX, we have three types of context basically. There is an initial context, there is a filters context, and there is a row context. Let's note that. We have an initial context, which is the default. We have the filters context, and we have the row context. What does this mean? If I clear out the filter on my slicer, the initial context for evaluation on the on what I have on my card visual is that it was just meant to return what the lump sum is. What is our total revenue? That is the context there. We want to know the total value. We wrote a sum and it returned that singular value for us. That's the default value it should return. So that's the initial context. But on this table visual now, the context has changed. There's a context transition on the table visual from just this singular value, which we can see as the total, to the breakdown that we have here. Why do we have this breakdown? Because the context has changed from the initial context now to a filters context. What is the filter applied on this total value? Is the regions. So we have used the regions to filter this value such that we now get the sum or the revenue for each of our regions. Is this making sense at all? Or I need to take it again.
It makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So now let me do something now. I will come to my table here, and then on the fact sales, yes, on the fact sales table, let me add a new column here. I will add a new column. And then on this new column, what I want to see is I want to see the total revenue. Okay, that is what I want to see. So I would say rev equals sum of fact sales revenue. Before I hit enter on this, what do we think this will return? What do we expect it to return? What do you expect this to return?
If you calculate per row,
Per row. So what we expect, Yinka, you want to say something?
No.
Okay, so what we expect this to return is to return the total transaction amount row by row. It should give us what the revenue is row by row. That is what we expect. But let's see, and let's enter and see what this returns. This is what we get. What is this figure? The total revenue. That is what this has returned. Okay. And what this is saying is that the definition of this, the implication, the reason why we have this is because the formula that we have used, it's not a formula that should go row by row in Power in DAX. It's a formula that should grab a whole column and then return whatever the result is. It's not meant to do what is called an iteration. So whenever we are writing formulas that we need the results to go row by row, then that formula is applying the third type of context, which is called a row context or an iteration. It's going row by row, evaluating row by row and returning the result. But now the sum function measure is an anchor formula. Is not meant to do an iteration. It's not meant to go row by row. That's why we are getting this particular result. So whenever we're working in Power BI, we need to understand what context do we want our formula to evaluate in, one, and also understand what context, or sorry, we need to understand two things. First is, how do we want our formula to evaluate? What do we expect as the result? And also, what context are we working in? We need to understand the two. So having mentioned this, so let's go back to something quickly. We have understood the context now. We have an initial context, we have a filters context, and we have row context. So whenever we are doing anything within Power BI or within DAX, and then we are not getting what we want to get, we need to alter the context within which that formula is being evaluated. We want to do a context transition. That is when we need a function in DAX which is called calculate. Do I need to take this again? Or do you understand?
Yes.
Okay,
No, please go
Please
right
take it
again.
again.
okay. Whenever we want to evaluate anything within DAX, and within that evaluation, we want to change the context of evaluation. We want to change how the formula should evaluate. We saw it earlier now on our table that the revenue sum that we did here, it returned the total revenue row by row. That is not how we want it to evaluate. We want it to evaluate what is the total revenue for this first transaction. It should return it. Go to the second row. What is the total revenue? Return that total revenue. And everything should sum up to what we actually do have now. Whenever we want to do an alteration like that, we want our formula to evaluate differently in another context, then we need to use calculate function to alter the context of evaluation. Do you understand this now?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Great. So now let's see that in action quickly. So this function that I have here, doing a sum of our total revenue. So if I wanted this to now go row by row, we already know what to do. Let me wrap this up in calculate. So I'll wrap this in calculate. And what calculate would do for me is to now change the context. And then if I hit enter at this point, I expect to have the revenue row by row evaluated. See what we have now. For row one, it's returning 210,000, which is the actual revenue for that transaction. So it has changed the context from it being on the initial context, now coming into a row context. So the formula is now going row by row. Okay, so now let's get back to this. This is just to drive home the point. So when you understand that we have three contexts, initial context, we have filters context, and we have the row context. So let's come back to our report. In the last class, we built this table. And what we did see on the table in the last class we we calculated our total revenue, and we saw that for each of the regions on the different months as we have on our table here, and the year as well. I think we have the year on this. Do we have the year on this? Let me see. Okay, we have the month, the region, total revenue. Okay, the month. Yeah, that's what we have. Okay, now, so let's now say that the request is we want to know what our revenue was for last year, or want to know what our revenue was in the previous month. What Power BI is doing by default, let me recreate this. Let me remove this other revenue and my month. Okay, I need the month actually. So where's this? I have the months here. Let me drag this up. So what this is doing now, it's breaking down the entire report by month, by region, and then it's giving us the revenue for each of the months. Okay, so we now want to get to see that, okay, if we look at our year, where's our year? Our year should be here too. We need to see our year, and this is coming summarized. So let me quickly see a fix for this. I'll go to my data view Go to my D calendar. I'll see my year. I need to format this as text. Format this as text and don't summarize. So I need to fix this. Where is my year again? Drop it here. Yeah, so we are back now. Okay, so now what we want to see now is to say that 2014 January we had this revenue. We want to now see side by side with 2015 figures so that we know, okay, not even 2015 figures. We want to see the previous month. So if I go to 2014 February, for instance, and then I look at 2014 February, I can say, okay, for 2014, we made this revenue, and then want to compare it to what we made in 2014 January. That is like going a month backwards. So let me just reduce the years that we have here. Let me filter this to just maybe 2014 and 2015. So I want to see just the two data here, 2014 and 2015. Yeah, that's all we have now. Okay, so now want to see our current month, want to compare it to our previous month. How do we go about that? So what we need to do is to write a measure. Of course, we are still looking at this total revenue, which obviously will be broken down by, by the region as we have here. Say maybe for the moment you can remove the region as well. Just remove the region so we have less data points. Yeah. So it will still break it down just by month and the year, but we want to now see, just go a step backwards. Let me reduce the year as well. Let me just use 1 year to illustrate this so that it's a lot more descriptive of what I want to do. So we are looking at 2014. Want to just see 2014 February compared to 2014 January. Let's see what the difference is, or let's just see at a glance what that value would be. Normally, if we do a revenue, total revenue, and drop it here, it will still break it down by months. But now we want to alter the evaluation context. We want to tell Dax that rather than returning values for the current month for me, I want you to go a step backwards. So for January now, the result I want to see should be 2013 December. When it comes to February, the revenue I want you to return should be 2014 January. And it continues like that. So you need to see now that we want to alter the evaluation context. So because we want to alter the evaluation context, then we need to wrap whatever revenue we are writing, we wrap it up in calculate and specify how we want that to be evaluated. That is just what we are doing. So let's quickly do this now. So I'll add a new measure, right click, new measure, and then I'll call this revenue previous month. And what are we doing here? We are still doing a sum of revenue. We are doing a sum of our fact sales revenue. Of course, you can leverage on the measure we had already created. That's best practice. So this is still what we want to do. But if we do this, it will not give us what we need. If I enter now, and then add this to my table, you can see that for the moment we still have the same figure. So let me just quickly format this comma separated. Okay, at the moment we still have the same figures, but now we want to tell Dax, don't evaluate just at the initial context. Don't evaluate normally. We want you to change the context of evaluation so that for each of this month we go a month backwards. And that is why we need that guy called calculate. So I'll write a calculate here, wrap this in calculate, and then calculate is asking for two things. What is calculate asking for? It's asking for the expression, which is what we already have, and then it's also asking for the filter. The filter here is saying that how do you want me to modify this calculation? How do you want me to alter this calculation? So we'll come here because we want to do a previous month. So we provide a previous month filters. So I'll do previous month. You can see we have previous day. You can go previous day. You can go previous quarter, you can go previous year. So now we want to do previous month, and previous month is asking for date. Where is your date column? Remember, we have a date, the calendar. So select the calendar date, and then I close my brackets for the filter. I close my brackets for calculate. So when I hit enter at this point, just observe what we would see on the visual. So we expect that it begins to return values for the previous month. So let me just click out for this. So now for January 2014, we have a blank. Coming to February 2014, the value that we have as the revenue is now the previous month's value, the same as what we had in January. But a quick question here, why is January 2014, why is it blank?
Because we don't have data for
Because
December
the
2013.
Because we don't have data for December 2013. Because we don't have data for that, that's why this is blank. So we add data for the other months because actually we have those data on our model. So that is how to, this is just a simple example of how to, apply filters or alter the way your DAX measure evaluates. Let's see something else quickly. So now let's say someone is saying that rather than say we want to see the previous month, how about if we are looking at this scenario here? Let me add a new page of report here, and I would add a table. And on my table, what I want to see is my region from here, and I want to see my revenue. I think that's total revenue, total rev. Yeah. So let me just quickly increase the size of the grid. Um, okay, so this is what we have. And then someone is saying that they actually do want to know, maybe in our meeting now, something practical. Okay, maybe in our meeting, this is our company, this is our company revenue, and we are the analysts. So we are saying that, oh, it seems Northeast is performing the best. We want to now do a comparison. We want to compare all other regions to Northeast. Want to see how close or how far are the other regions to Northeast. Northeast at the moment, they made 19 billion. That's the revenue from Northeast. North Central 6 billion, Northwest 9 billion. So we want to see how far we are making Northeast the benchmark now. And probably we are setting that as a target for all other regions. They need to beat Northeast. So we want to now see how far or how close are people from Northeast region. So how do we go about this? If we do the normal total revenue, okay, what you still get will still be broken down by all these filters that are already here. But we need to find a way to tell DAX that DAX, see, we need to find a way to tell DAX that DAX, ignore all these filters here and return whatever the value for Northeast is. Return that to us. We need to tell DAX that. And how do we go about that? I'll add a new measure here. Add a new measure. And then I can say maybe Northeast revenue. And then I'll do my normal sum. And at the moment, I will not do a sum again because we already have that revenue. So I will call the measure, just use the square bracket to call the measure. I'll do a total rev. I think this is it. That is the measure. But if we click on this will still evaluate the same way. If I drop this on my table, it evaluates the same way still, okay? We have this returning the same result. But what we want to see so as to aid our evaluation and calculation is under Northeast Rev, we want to see just Northeast. So for North Central, it should return 19 billion, the value for Northeast. Northeast, 19 billion. Northwest, 19 billion, because that is what we want to see so that would aid whatever quick visual analysis we want to do. So what we need to do is wrap this guy within calculate, wrap it within calculate and tell it to ignore whatever is here. That's what we need to do. So how do we do that? I'll come here, I'll say calculate, okay, calculate, change the filters on this, and then for the region, filter this to north, east, okay. I'm telling calculate now that evaluate the total revenue, but what I need you to return is whatever the revenue is for northeast. That is what I need you to return. So at the moment, if I hit enter now, what I expect to see is the revenue for northeast. Why am I saying the revenue for northeast? Because in my calculation, it's still doing a total revenue. But because the powerful calculate is now telling Dax that yes, we are doing total revenue, but what we just want to return is where our D-store region is equal to northeast. So whatever the value for northeast is within our calculation is what these guys want to see. And with this, we have altered the context. Okay. Another thing, quick one, real life, that we may want to do is that instead of saying that we want to see the northeast revenue, we may actually want to do a comparison each of this region to the grand total. We want to compare these regions to the grand total to say that, okay, what percentage of our grand total is coming from North Central? What percentage of grand total is coming from Northeast? What percentage of grand total, or how much is Northwest contributing to what we have here? This is something we can do as well, but we need to be able to express to Dax that Dax, this is what we need you to do. How do we do this? Let's see this quickly, and so we can move on into something else. So I'll add a new measure at this point. I would say ground revenue. Okay, ground revenue. We are still doing a revenue, total rev. That is still what we're doing, but we need to tell Dax that Dax, when you evaluate this, ignore all these regions. What we want to see is the total returned for each of the regions. Ignore whatever filters is here. That is what we want to tell Dax. We are altering the context of calculation. The initial context, or the context of calculation here, should be that it is filtered by regions, but we want to alter that to say that ignore whatever filter is here, return the grand total for each of the rows. How do we do that? We do a calculate here again, calculate our total revenue, and all, that is a table function, region, all region, return all region, hit enter. And then when we add this to our report, we expect this to return all. So what this all is doing here is saying that we want to see all our region. Don't break down the region. All the regions put together, return whatever the revenue is, and then we have that here. Is this making sense at all? Or we are confused?
It's clear to
It's
me.
becoming interesting.
Becoming interesting. Great.
Yeah.
So we are beginning to see the power of DAX. There are things, so many things that we cannot do by default when it comes to building reports within Power BI. So many things that we can't do by default. Although to some extent, yes, we can build reports, fancy reports, meaningful reports with just our visualizations. But when we are now talking of deeper analytics, seeing what is happening within our data, we cannot really do those if we don't understand DAX and if we are not deploying DAX within our reports. Yes, Femi.
Okay, so the question now is, how do you get to know the expressions or the functions that you can use? Now you were able to say, you were able to come up with using all. Okay.
Hmm.
The other one you came up with previous month.
Hmm.
For people like us, how do we get to know, or where do we find the table of expressions that
Okay.
we can familiarize ourselves with,
Mm.
and then see how to use them when the need arises.
Okay, thanks a lot for that question. There are documentations online. Microsoft has a Dax documentation, which we can actually do explore to see. Let me see if I can get to that quickly now. So on the Dax documentation, we can actually where's this? We can actually go to, let me, if I just type Dax documentation. Yeah, so this is it here. Lot of functions. I think at the moment it's more than say 400 functions. So you can see DAX functions here. We have the different categories. So if I come to my filters, all is a filter, which I've just used now. And what all does, if I click on all, what it does is to returns all the rows in a table. It ignores filters. Look at ignoring any filters that might have been applied. That is what all does. And that is what we deployed all to do for us here. Ignore all these filters, do the this calculation and return the values for us. So this is actually a great resource. This DAX documentation, Microsoft, it is a great resource that we can use. And the other thing is this. Some of these functions that we already know in DAX, some count rows, um, date div, date add. Some of these we need to use them frequently. And then we would need to only know to try to get some of the helper functions that we might need to get to the destination. The ones we know, even from Excel, some of the functions we use already in Excel, they are here. If I come to the logical functions here, logical functions, you can see we have and, we have if, we have not, we have switch. All these are functions that exist in Excel. If error is in Excel. Qualis, I'm not sure if Qualis is in Excel. Okay, these are functions that are already in Excel. So the same way they work in Excel, that's how they work in DAX as well. If we go to the aggregations, you see we have average, average A, average X, count A, count AX. All of these are in Excel. Count X, max, they are in Excel. So the same way they work in Excel, that's how they work here. So what we need to just try to understand is the situation I am working on, what I want to resolve. Does it need me to alter the filter or the context of evaluation? Does it need me to alter the evaluation context? If it needs me to alter the evaluation context, then I probably would need calculate. So if I need calculate, how do I want to alter the context? That is the question now. If you're altering the context based on time, dates, you can just begin to explore. Okay, you want to see same period last year. Okay, so you are looking at, on your table, you have 2014. Let's look at this quickly. We have this, our visual here. Yes, this again. We have 2014 data here. If I add 2015 data now, on this, if I add 2015 as well, and this goes down to 2015, okay? And then I want to begin to compare. I want to see 2014 January against 2015 January, 2014 February against 2015 February, 2014 March against 2015 March. I want to see that same period comparison. What I need to do is, fine, I need to alter the context. My total revenue must not evaluate and get it filtered just the normal way again. No, I need to alter the context. So if I'm altering the context, I'm using a calculate. How do I want to alter the context? I want it to return the same period. January 2014. If I'm looking at January 2015, I want it to return January 2014. If I'm looking at February 2015, I want it to return February 2014. That is the same period last year. There is a filter in Power BI Index that is same period last year. We just type same period last year. It gives us that. We put in our date, and then that evaluates to what we want to see. So on the primary level is those functions that we already know in Excel. Let's deploy them in Power BI. Most of them are in Power BI, not all. Some of them are in Power BI, are in DAX, and the other ones that we might need, let's just have the DAX documentation handy with us. We can always go to the DAX documentation. They have already been categorized. So we see, okay, we want to do a filter. We see the category there. We want to say do an aggregation. We see the category. We want to see do a logical. We see the category there, and like that. I don't know if I've answered this a bit.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so let's quickly go a bit further here. So now we have this. We have seen our total revenue. Okay, Yinka, quickly.
To add to what you have said about the documentation,
Okay,
I've dropped a file on the group that contains all the DAX formulas.
okay. On the WhatsApp group.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. 705
Thank
pages. Can
you.
I finish that? Okay, thanks a lot for that. So there are resources that we can always explore to see what we want to do, how we can go about achieving that. So let's just take this a bit further now. We have our total revenue for each of the regions, and we have the grand revenue. Let's do a quick comparison here. We have the total revenue, we have the grand revenue. How do we quickly compare to say that what percentage of the total revenue is the grand revenue? So I can add a new measure here. A couple of ways to achieve this. I can add a new measure here and say that we want to know percentage percentage of grand total. Want to know this? So we want to see how much did North Central contribute to the grand total. So we can do just a simple divide. There's a function in Power the index divide. What are we dividing? Remember, we are dividing our total revenue, which was filtered by region. So I'll go down to total revenue, and we are dividing this by our grand. Dividing this by the grand revenue. Okay, this is what we are dividing. I'll close my bracket. I'll hit enter, and then if I add this on my visual, so this has given us how much did North Central contribute to the total revenue, and I can format this percentage format, and so we can see now that North Central only brought in 9%. This is we are getting insights now. Looking at the figure, we may think this figure seems huge. They're trying, but now just 9% from North Central. They're not doing so well. Northeast. Why is Northeast doing 25%? That's 1/4 of our entire revenue, and we have 6 regions. 1/4 of the entire revenue is coming from one of 6 regions. So what are the remaining regions doing? So this is beginning to drive some insight around what we could, begin to see about our business. So this is some of the typical ways we can deploy DAX to get deeper into whatever we have in our data. And to get this grant total, we actually do not need this column. If I remove this column, this grant revenue column, it doesn't impact this. It doesn't impact it. And this formula that we have written differently, we can actually write everything on a single measure, and then we still have the same result. So, but it needs us to understand what the situation is, what do we want to achieve, how do we want to achieve it, within what context is our formula evaluating. That is the most important thing. We need to understand within what context is our formula evaluating, and then we now go forward to say that, okay, if my formula is evaluating within the filters context and I want to alter it to evaluate within the row context, what do I need to do? Wrap it within calculate, specify the filter expression, and you are good. Okay? Any question now?
Yes. So I'm wondering, we just use divide.
Yes,
So
please.
we didn't use calculate. Why is it that we didn't use calculate? Since we said, I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone has an answer to that? Let me survey if we understand what's happening here. Thank you for that question. Why didn't we use calculate? Wrapping our divide within calculate. Anybody? Let's think around it for a minute.
Um, I think divide is also working the way sum works.
Mhm.
So we are not really altering something special there. It's more of we using the total revenue that has been filtered for North Central divided by the grand total, and it's giving us
Excellent.
the result.
That's the keyword I needed. We are not altering the evaluation context. We want this to evaluate and consider the filter that we already have on the table. Evaluate this formula, return what percentage does this number for North Central translate to. If what we want to see is that we want this to evaluate and then ignore all of this, want it to evaluate but ignore all of this, and so maybe you want to see like 100%, 100%, 100% on each of the rows on this table. That is when we need to wrap this within calculate so that it changes the context of calculation and then does what we want it to do. Do you understand now, Femi?
Yes, I understand.
Yes. So that is the primary thing whenever we are working with DAX. Just for a second, think through what you're trying to do. Am I trying to, do I want my results to consider whatever evaluation context is being, is being applied on my visual? Do I want that to be considered or do I want to change it? If you want it to be considered, this is an anchor measure. Use it straight up and then you get whatever you need to get. But if you want it to change, if you want it to evaluate differently from what this is expected to return, then what we need to do is to wrap this within calculate and tell calculate how you want this to evaluate. Do you want it to ignore all of these filters? You want it to use some other external filters and then return the result? That is what we need to put into consideration. So quickly now, a quick challenge. I want us to write a measure, everybody. Write a measure that returns the difference, between the actual revenue, this is our total revenue, and the Northeast revenue. Write a quick measure that would return the difference between total revenue and Northeast revenue and have it returned, have it visualized on your table. Quickly, 2 minutes, and then let's raise our hand as soon as you have that.
Excuse me, are we sharing our screen?
I just want to know when we are done first. Everybody should do
Okay.
it individually. When you are done, raise your hand so I know we are done first.
Hello, Mohsen, please repeat the question again.
Yes, so write a measure that will return the difference between the total revenue and the Northeast revenue. Okay, I can see one hand up. Who else? Two hands up. Let me just wait 30 seconds more. Let's see if we have more results. Okay, so Yinka, what did you do? Okay, thank you, Ablaziz too. So Yinka, what did you do? How did you get your results? You're muted. Don't know if you're speaking.
Okay. I use the total rev minus the noticed rev.
Total rev minus notice rev. Okay. Sandra, was that the same thing you did? Hello, Sandra. Okay, maybe Sandra is not here. Ablaziz, how about you? Was that the same thing you did?
Yeah, I did calculate difference between total revenue and noticed revenue.
You did calculate the difference. How did you write that?
Like
Equal to
I wrote calculate,
uh-huh,
then brackets,
uh-huh,
um difference
uh-huh.
in square bracket total revenue, comma. I opened another square bracket, noticed revenue, and I closed it.
So why did you use calculate?
Um, yeah, because it's going to give me the the difference for each row uh, of the of what I'm finding, like
Okay.
giving the yeah.
Does that mean if you didn't use calculate, it won't give you the difference? Try without calculate.
Mm.
Okay, so what I'm driving at is this. In this instance, we don't need calculate because you still want whatever filters you have applied, you want it to apply on your calculation. But think about this for a second. Can we use the sum function to achieve what we just did? Think about it. Can we? Can we use the sum function? Can we? What do we think?
I just think we cannot use it because if we are trying to find the difference,
Hmm?
so sum is going to be like adding some function, like adding some um it's like we are adding the some data together.
Mhm.
So some function might not work, I think.
Okay.
I think some function can work
Okay. How?
I think so too.
in the
Okay.
sense that, like, for example, the sum of, wait, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Femi, please go on.
So, um, okay. We're looking for the difference between total revenue and the notice, right?
Yeah.
So I think some can work.
Okay. How would we do that?
Okay, so we're not using calculate.
No, I'm asking if some can work, how do we? What's the manipulation? How do we apply sum?
Mm, okay. So if we say calculate okay, we're not using calculate because we're not altering. We still want to use the filter.
Mhm.
So it will be it will be some um, total revenue, right?
Mhm.
Um, we can now do minus northeast revenue.
Sum of total revenue
Yes,
minus
northeast revenue.
northeast revenue. Hmm.
I'm not telling you
Uh,
all the brackets in between now because I'm not using my system.
yeah.
Because I don't have that particular file. I'm just
Okay.
writing it on my
Yeah.
notebook.
Okay. Okay. So this is it. What I want to get us to begin to see is that for whatever challenge we have before us, for whatever situation, there are different approaches to it. We might be looking at some Power BI files, and then maybe someone has narrated a situation to you, and you were thinking in one direction around the solution to that thing, and then you got a solution from someone else, and they did something entirely differently. You have the same results, but what could have differed is what each individual's considered around the evaluation of whatever function or whatever measure they are writing. So it depends on how we consider the measure. That is what will translate to how what's it called? How our results would appear, or how what will get eventually as our result. If you use the sum function is meant to take just a single column. That is what it's meant to take, really. Okay. So if you want to apply some function, maybe you are doing something like sum having or some having, then in bracket you're adding your total revenue, then minus you're having a calculate, you are doing a sum of total revenue, and then filtering it to northeast. So it's a longer version of it, but it will return the same answer. It should return the same answer. So if you do something like this quickly, here's this fact sales. I had a new measure here, and we say that um, rev difference equal to sum of fact sales revenue minus calculate sum fact sales revenue and fact sales not fact sales. Then we are filtering our region star region equal to, this should be north east. This, close this bracket, and yes, hit enter. And if I add this to the model, to the report, we have the same results. I'm sure this is the result you have too, right? Confirm. Is it what we got?
Yes.
Yeah. So look at what I wrote now. Sum fact sales minus calculate sum did blah 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 blah. This is a longer version of what we have done, but it's only because of how I thought about the solution. I thought about it differently, and that's what led me to writing something like this. So your approach was different, but we are having the same result. So essentially, what I'm trying to bring out from here is that we can think about the situations differently, but let's be sure of what our approach will result to, what evaluation context are we in, and then compare that to what we eventually get. If what we get is something surprising, we are getting some, wonderful result. We know probably we did not consider the evaluation context properly. So this is just a summary of how the DAX engine works. So I believe with this foundation, we should now begin to think through whatever report we are working on and going towards how we want to begin to dig out some more insights, more analytics from our report, and that will drive us towards writing some DAX. And if you're doing anything you're stuck, that's why we have the group. You can always post those on the group. Some of our colleagues will assist. If no one could attend to that, we have our trainers on the platform, and then definitely they can assist with that. But with what we have done, does DAX does it make any sense to us? Are we beginning to see what the capabilities within DAX is, and do we have the foundations? I've asked too many questions. Which one should be answered first? What do we think? What do we think?
Please go over the question again, or the
Yeah.
questions again.
Okay. So with what we have seen now, what do we think of our foundation with DAX, and what do we think of the capabilities of DAX? So who's going? Who's going? Who's going?
The capabilities of that, let me say, it is limitless because it is you can do it. You can use it to do anything you want. So far, you have the idea in your head. This is what I want to do, and this is the result I want to get. So you know how to manipulate your tax formula to get the results. Then the foundation, the DAX foundation we have, I think um, we've gotten a bit of solid foundation which we can actually build ourselves upon.
Okay. Thank you, Yinka. Anyone else? What do we think?
Yeah, it seems with DAX, there's a lot of manipulations that can be done. It seems to be a very powerful tool, with what we have learned. And then in terms of the foundation, well, the knowledge is still um, at the basic level, but I think what you've tried to help us do is, understand, how we can use even our little knowledge, to explore different ways to do the same thing with different expression in DAX. So we can get better, when we um, familiarize ourselves with different expressions. So, but I think it's a powerful tool. That's what I would say, which we can get better with practice and exploring, practicing. Bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the key word there. Thanks a lot, Femi. That's the key word, practice. So when you attend or you are with people and then you see them just writing DAX as though they are not thinking through what's happening, it's because they have practiced so much. So even when they are not, so far they have, they have a good articulation of what they want to do in their head, then their hands are guided towards what they are writing. They know what they are writing, they understand how this will evaluate, they understand what the expected results should look like. So, but basic line or the baseline is that we need to practice as much as we can. Practice is key. So tomorrow we'll do this way we'll stop the DAX for now. So we'll do tomorrow. We'll look at a few more things within Power BI, the Power BI service, how to share report, um, and probably just explore some bits tomorrow. And then from next week, Saturday, we start Power Automate. So we are ending Power BI for now this weekend, and I really do hope that probably sometimes later we'll have dedicated series for, say, DAX, or say something around probably building advanced analytics within Power BI and some other things that are related to analytics. But for now, what we are just trying to achieve is, so we have a solid foundation, we have a good introduction and workable one around the Power Platform, so that even we can say that, okay, confidently we can build solutions, even if they would be, just familiar basic solutions. We can build them, and then we continue to build on that on that foundation to get to a more intermediate and the advanced level. So please, in the next 2-3 minutes, if we have questions based on what we did today, what we have done previously, whatever we have done so far, if you have any questions, please let's ask before we call it a night. Okay, looking like we're good. Okay, Yinka, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Actually, it is like me taking us back to what we've done before, or let me say going back to data prep.
Okay.
So my question is it always advisable to always filter out empty cells, even if some of the columns for that row is containing some data, but
Hmm.
the role completely is not containing some data,
Mhm.
which in some column, if that empty cell exists, then it's going to affect what you are trying to, the result you are trying to get for that column.
Mhm.
So is it advisable to filter out the entire row, or you just have to find a way around it?
Okay, thanks a lot for that question. This is something relative, really. But what I usually advise is that whenever you are filtering out rows of your data set in Power Query, do it carefully. And what I mean by do it carefully is that, most especially, one, what we need to first know is that having null values is not totally bad in your data set. Nulls are not totally bad. They are not our enemy. We need to have that at the back of our mind, because that is usually the reason why we always want to filter, because we don't want to see nulls. You are doing a data quality check, and then where you have valid, error, and null, you want everything to be 100% valid, 100% valid. You don't want to see nulls. Nulls are not totally bad. If you have some nulls in your data set, it doesn't in any way impact the integrity of your data, depending on what the causes of the nulls are. So, if we want to filter out nulls in our data set, we need to do it very carefully. And what I mean by doing it very carefully is that you need to ensure that this does not, or would not, eventually impact your result, your report. What I mean by this is, for instance, if I have a data set like we are working on, this is our sales data. Now, if I have something like this, and then I have a null, an empty row, not completely empty. Maybe I really do not have, maybe I don't have the store, for instance. I don't have the trade date. I don't have line of business. I have the revenue. I have the units sold on that row. Okay, so I have model, I have revenue, I have units sold on that row. I don't have every other thing. What I would say in this instance is that don't filter out that row. Why? Because if you filter that row, that would impact your total revenue. One, your total revenue would not be accurate because you have lost part of your revenue by filtering. Secondly, is that when you are building dimensional reports. You are building reports based on the different categories or dimensions. You want to build reports by line of business. Of course, your report by line of business would not be accurate, but your total revenue for that line of business will still be accurate because you have that data. You only do not have line of business for this particular transaction. But when you build your report model by revenue, that will be accurate because you have model and you have revenue. But really, whenever you see that, that would impact your report in a way, maybe it affects your revenue or it affects your units sold, it is always advisable that you leave it off there. So what you could do, depending on the situation, is if I have an empty row or an empty cell like this, the line of business was not recorded, I can decide to just replace that empty with one of my line of business. So that gets added to one of the line of business. That may not be totally accurate, but that way I have kept my revenue, so my revenue has not been compromised. And so what the question might just be around is, you recorded parts for this, it ought to have been service plan. That would be the question. But if you filtered out, you have lost this revenue for this transaction, and that would impact your report, impact your total revenue. So you're telling the firm that they made this revenue, whereas what they made was higher than that, and that might lead to some integrity issues. I don't know if that is a bit clear.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. All right. I've gone beyond the time I did mention. Okay,
Earlier
Femi.
on, earlier on you said you were going to say something around when I was talking about employee file.
Uh,
It's too late
uh,
now.
No, no, no. I'm even trying to remember what I wanted to say around that. I remembered you mentioned something around
Yes,
model,
that I
within
didn't go
model.
through. Yes, I didn't go through the normal
Yeah.
categorizing,
Mhm,
finding identifying the keys
mhm.
and all that. You
And
know.
creating the separate tables.
Yes.
Yeah. What did I want to say? Okay. So I think probably what I was thinking. I'm not sure I noted that down. Really, that's bad of me. So what I think probably was like for what well, that's one of the things that I think people do today. People just want to quickly jump on the fancy stuff. They want to begin to build reports. So they not many people out there, most especially if you're working with people in the managerial roles, they just want to see what the report is. They are not aware of what went on in the kitchen cooking that particular report. So that process, transforming your data, modeling your data, if they are not properly taken care of, eventually you will spend more than the time needed in creating that report. You might be able to create your report, meaningful reports to some extent, with just that just single table that has not been normalized. You might be able to do that, but you might eventually have some challenges that will return you back to now modeling your data. And when you now go back to model your data, you have taken some time, you have wasted some time already. So it's always good not to jump steps. Follow it through. Ensure your data is ready for analysis. The golden rules of data management. Look at those. Then go on to model your data. Model your data properly. Ensure your model is working. You need your data table. Bring that in. Connect it. Look at all the connections. Star schema, waterfall. Do all of those, and then before you now begin to create reports. Report creation is actually the list of things you want to do, and in my opinion is the easiest thing. So all of these things that you need to ensure you do must be done well. And to be frank with ourselves, if your model is not working, your DAX will not work. Most likely there will be issues with the DAX. Your DAX might be evaluating to some funny results. So you need to be sure that your model is working well before you begin to jump into writing DAX. So those are some of the things that we need to do. I think probably that's what I was thinking I would mention then. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. So we see us tomorrow. Let's expect to get our We'll get Power BI project file, the data set we'll work on. We'll get that after tomorrow's session, God willing, and then all the projects would come in.
Please to
Maybe
mind this other one.
sorry. Okay. Any other thing? Any other thing before we call it a night? Is it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, I missed the introduction to Dax that was done last week, Sunday. Though that was due to a fight between me and Ete.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Not really like that. I was like, I made a subscription of 20 gigabytes. I was supposed to be given 40 gigabytes. That was what they told me. I couldn't get the 40 gigabytes. So I had to start sending them email, sending them message on Twitter. I'm waiting till they add the data before using the data. But unfortunately, till now, they haven't add the data. I just had to start using the data like that. So that was why I was off on Sunday. I couldn't attend the class.
Yeah, but it will be nice to catch up with that. We discussed a bit of fundamentals on how to think around DAX. So what we did today was a build up on what we did last week. So if you can make out time to get that, that's already on the YouTube channel, I think. So just
All right, I'll do
skip
that.
through that, and whatever questions you see about around DAX, we can always look at those together.
All right.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. See us tomorrow, God willing. Let's do have a great night's rest.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Martin.
Bye.
Thank you.